Welcome to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network with your hostess, Jen Josie. Join like-minded real estate investors and accelerate your business towards greatness. You will hear step-by-step strategies for success, interviews with real estate rock stars, and we will dig deep into past projects where we bear it all, including the good, the bad, and some just plain ugly. So get excited. Here's the bestower of badassery herself, the real Jen Josie. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jen Josie, creator of RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Whoop, whoop. On today's episode, we have a guest that will be sharing their badassery. But before we begin, here's today's badassery bestowment, my little badass gift to you. Today's topic is self-directed IRAs. For real estate investors looking to diversify their investment portfolio, a self-directed individual retirement account, also known as IRA, can be a game changer. A self-directed IRA provides you with a unique opportunity to invest in real estate, a benefit not typically offered by traditional IRAs. This approach enables you to expand beyond the usual stocks and bonds, tapping into the potentially lucrative world of real estate investing. Using a self-directed IRA to invest in real estate offers several advantages. Firstly, it allows for tax advantage growth, meaning either tax deferred or tax-free profits, depending on the type of IRA. This can significantly increase your earning potential over time. Secondly, it provides you with the flexibility to invest in a variety of real estate options, from rental properties to commercial real estate and even land. However, it's important to be aware of the rules and regulations surrounding self-directed IRAs, including prohibited transactions and disqualified persons, to ensure compliance and maximize the benefits. So, incorporating a self-directed IRA into your real estate investment strategy can significantly enhance your portfolio's growth while offering a diversified approach to your retirement savings. It's a powerful tool that, when used wisely, can help build substantial wealth in the long term. Now, on to today's episode of the Real Estate Investor Growth Network podcast. We have with us Scott Jelinek. Scott is a successful entrepreneur and real estate investor with over 30 years experience in the industry. Scott has completed over 800 deals, established himself as a leader in the field, and developed a unique investment strategy called the slow flip. This strategy has allowed him to own 178 houses and generate a steady monthly income without the typical landlord headaches. I want to know how he owns all those properties without getting a headache, so let's get this party started. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you for having me, Jen, and I love the sound effects.
Thank you. Jelinek, I said it right.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
I get so nervous about saying people's names correctly because I screwed up one time and I'm like, we'll never do that again. So Scott, so great to have you here. And we're kind of neighbors. You're just north of me in Virginia Beach. I like investing in Virginia. Give us a little background. How'd you get involved with real estate? 30 years experience. I don't believe it.
It's actually 1994, so it's just under 30 years. So my first house I bought in 1994. And, I was a landscaper. I mowed lawns. I'm going to give you a short version of a story. But back then, I don't know if you can remember, but there was a thing then called non-qualifying assumptions. And that was when you were allowed to take over someone's mortgage without any credit check or any pulse or job or anything, much like a sub-2, but with the blessing of the bank. They did away with them in 1987 for FHA and 89 for VA, but you were able to take them over for the full 30 years, right? And so my brother had got a flyer on his door about one of these houses. This is back when the internet wasn't around, so agents actually walked neighborhoods and did flyers, and it said $5,000 down, take over payments, no credit check. And so he sent it to me, and I was renting a place at the time, and I had zero interest in real estate, but I just knew better to own than to rent, right? So I went over and looked at it, and I ended up agreeing to buy it. I actually pulled out the $5,000 cash in my pocket because I didn't know how real estate worked. I thought I'd hand her the money, she'd hand me the keys. And, and that was my first lesson. And she was like, no, we got to have a closing and go to an attorney, right? And then I moved into this house, and no interest in real estate. I started mowing lawns around the townhouse neighborhood now. And then probably 2-3 weeks after I bought it, a sign came up on the block, a handwritten white sign, magic marker that said $2,000 down, take over payments. And so without knowing anything about real estate or equity or value or anything at all, I felt like I got ripped off because I just bought this one that was 5,000 down, and now this one was 2,000 down. And so I got mad, and my genius brain said, why don't we buy this one also? And that will cost average me out to 3,500. And so that was my first, getting into real estate. And what happened after that is every single month, the tenant would pay me. I rented it for $675 a month, and my payment was just at $675. So clearly not a good business model, right? But every month they would pay me and I would pay the mortgage, and it kept dinging me every month, making me think, I borrowed this money and they're paying it off. I borrowed it, they're paying it off. And then I became obsessed with how many can I buy and how many do I need? And back then my plan was wait out 30 years, buy them and wait out the time until they're free and clear, until I can finally start making money. And then I've been through every roller coaster since then. So again, that was 94, but I've been through every roller coaster since then. And real estate's what I do full time.
And I bet it doesn't go for $675 anymore.
Those same houses now are about $1,900 a month. Yeah.
Wow. Do you still own that one by any chance?
I do not. There's a longer. If you want the longer story, I'll give you the. I said it was a roller coaster. I can give you the ups and downs.
So
how I got to what I do now.
Well, I'm going to guess because one of your bullet points here is how you survived the housing crash. Does that have to do with it?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I survive would be using that word loosely. So I had, I'll give you, we got time, so I'll tell you the longer version. So up until 2001, I was just buying to hold, right? Because we didn't really have any appreciation. From the time I started buying till 2001, everything was the same price. So I was just buying to hold. And in 2001 is when I had about 20 properties by that time. And then I started saying, okay, I'm a real estate investor now. I got 20 houses. I've been doing this for a few years. And I started going to seminars and reading books and learning everything I could learn. And everybody taught the same thing, which ironically they still teach, which was the BRRRR method and debt equity and pull out the money and leverage. And so I did everything that I was taught. I refied those 20 properties. I pulled out all the cash and I started buying more properties. I got to 84 properties by 2007. I had 84 properties and I had 84 mortgages. And overnight, and when I say overnight, it was overnight. And everybody says 2008. I'm like, no, it was 2007. I can show you my QuickBooks and show you exactly what it was. Overnight, it just, everything stopped. I mean, 30-40% of the people weren't paying. Houses that were in the process of being sold, the mortgage companies were going out of business. You couldn't sell. Houses that were in the middle of being rehabbed, you couldn't sell because, again, the world came to a standstill for a good 15 months. And I had a lot of money I say a lot, not what I'd consider a lot now, but I had just under $1 million in cash at the time. So I felt like I could survive, I can sustain it. And I spent every dollar, I was losing $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month just maintaining my mortgages. I spent every dollar. And then when I ran out, you can imagine what came next. I lost 55 of those houses to foreclosure. And and then losing houses to foreclosure is hard on anyone, but it's especially hard. I'm driving an Escalade with stop foreclosure on the side of it. That was my business, was stopping other people's foreclosures. So
gosh.
It was a really tough time. And, and mostly everybody in business back then went to their previous lives. They went back to their job, went back to whatever they were doing before the boom. And I unfortunately had nothing I could go back to because I was mowing lawns before I got into real estate. And I was living a good life. I'm like, so for me, I couldn't get a job. I would need to get a job like as a surgeon or something. And I'm a high school dropout, so that wasn't likely to happen. And so I tried, I started paying attention to who some people were still crushing it. So I started paying attention to what they were doing different. And, and I learned a lot. And one of the big things, and a lot of this is very controversial, so people love to argue with me on it. But one of the big things I noticed the people who were crushing it did differently was they owned everything free and clear. They owned everything free and clear. Their cars, their house, their rentals, everything was free and clear. And I was like, well, that, if you spoke to me in 2006, I'm like, they're stupid. They can make so much more money right? And then after the bust, I'm like, man, maybe they knew what they were doing all along. And so that's when I kind of revamped everything I was doing, but I was out of money. So you can't buy stuff free and clear, right? When you don't have any money. And so that's where we created the slow flip program, which is a hybrid. We do use leverage, but we do it short term. And so I've learned a lot over the years, but that's one thing that I'm dead set on never to change is the free and clear mindset.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm against that as well, but
everybody's against it.
I am totally open to hearing about what you have to say about it. And I want to get into the slow flip, but before we get into that, do you think we're headed towards another housing crash like we had in 2008?
So I'm going to
2007, according to your QuickBooks.
Yeah. So if you were to talk to me November of 2022, and I actually did videos on it, all data suggested 2023 was going to be a bust. Everything suggested it. I made videos on it. I firmly believed it. I told my people in my program, let's stop buying, let's buckle down, get everything secure. And I was so wrong because, everybody was wrong because we boomed in 2023. And so I've come to the conclusion that nobody knows and nobody's going to know. And we're all going to find out the same time. And that's a day after it happens. Because until then, there's all the data almost doesn't matter because there's government interference. They're manipulating stuff. And so we're all going to find out a day after it happens. And then half the people are going to say, that's what I thought was going to happen. And then half the people are going to say, oh, I didn't see that coming. But I firmly believe that nobody knows, no matter what show you watch, no matter what books you read, what articles you read, everybody's making it up. And it's well, not only are they making it up, but there's so many variables with government interference as to what's actually going to end up happening that I've kind of just said, hey, we're going to keep pushing forward. We're going to do what we do, and we'll see we'll all find out the same day. The day after it happens, we'll all find out.
Well said. I agree. Nobody knows what's going to happen. No one has a crystal ball. So I am ready to hear about this slow flip, and I'd love to start diving into this now. But before we get into the slow flip, you said it is not like what all the gurus were teaching, which is the BRRRR strategy. So first of all, explain what the BRRRR strategy is. Stands for buy, renovate, refinance. No, I'm sorry. Buy, renovate, rent, refinance, then repeat. So tell us how the slow flip is not like the BRRRR strategy.
Well, we buy, but we don't renovate, we don't refinance, and we don't rent. So, but we do repeat a lot.
Very good.
So that's where it's very different. Yeah, I don't believe in the leverage model where, everybody teaches. And I was the biggest, if you talked to me during the boom, I would have been preaching from the rooftops about how great leverage is and you can make so much more money if, and I've changed my tune drastically now. And every time I hear someone tell me or try to pitch to me, you can make so much more money if, the way I end it without arguing is I say, you go make all that money. Don't worry about me. You go make all that money. And it's just easier because the reality is they're right. And that's why I don't have the argument. All the math will prove to everything they're saying is correct, providing the world keeps going the way the world's been going since 2009. Anybody who started at 2009 or later will wholeheartedly believe that. And I will too. I almost feel like I expected it to have a correction sooner. They always say real estate has a 10-year cycle, but a 7-year memory, right? Well, here we are. How long has it been now? We're at 14, 15 years, and we're still rocking and rolling. So, so there's a lot to be said to it. It does work. The BRRRR method does work, and it will continue to work until it doesn't. But I'm just too old to start over again, which is why I'm like, no, not doing that twice.
All right. So you buy and you repeat. Tell us about the slow flip here.
So there's two sides to the slow flip. There's the buy side and the sell side, right? And so the buy side is where we buy them on short-term financing, amortized short-term financing. So there's no balloon. A lot of times when people hear my numbers, they're like, yeah, but then you have a balloon in 5 years. There's no balloon. I'm also going to tell you prices, Jen, that you're in a market that you may have some of these prices, but we buy remotely. We will buy properties that are ridiculously low priced. And depending on where your listeners are, a lot of times people's first instinct is to say, that's not possible. Houses in that price range don't exist. You can't buy a garage for that price, right? We'll buy houses for $30,000, right? And I always tell people when they're like, they don't exist. I'm like, spend 5 minutes on Google or Zillow and you can just type in states.
They're out there.
There's tons of them.
Yes.
So then we borrow private money to fund them. So this is done with none of our own money. We pay 12% interest. So that's a high interest rate. Everybody's talking about the rates now. I'm like, we've been paying 12 since 2011. So we pay 12% interest, fully amortized for 60 months. So the payment on a $30,000 mortgage is $667.33. for 60 payments, and then it's free and clear after that. The 61st payment doesn't exist. There's 60 payments. That's the buy side. The sell side is we take that same house, the same day we buy it, the same condition we buy it in, and we sell it with long-term owner financing. So when I say I have 178, I do have 178, but they're not rentals. They're like notes, although the deeds are in my name. So we sell them with owner financing on a 30-year mortgage as is. We typically will sell them for $89,000. We typically will get an average of $875 a month. So we don't make any money now for the first 5 years because after taxes and insurance, we're getting $875. We're paying out $667. But on the 61st month, they're all free and clear. And so that's the whole model. That's why it's the slow flip, because it's not meant. I always tell people, I said, if you're looking for Lamborghinis and yachts, this is not the program for you. My program is for people who just want freedom. My program is for people who just don't want to go to work anymore, want to set themselves free, and don't want to have to be making $1 for the rest of their lives. Like I wholesale too. I love wholesaling, but you get paid. You do a deal this month, you get paid. If you stop getting paid. With slow flips, we work the once, and now you get paid, for the next 30 years, which is why we love it. So we don't do any repairs. We don't do any maintenance. We operate like a bank. Every month, our checks come in. We pay out if we still have a private lender, and we don't have any more any repairs, any maintenance, any turnover, very little turnover, none of the landlord headaches that you typically have to deal with.
Okay. I can tell you've done this just a few times. And so you went through that rather quickly. I got to slow it down and go back through these numbers because that sounded very exciting to me, because I'm just thinking of an area that I'm going to Saturday. Let's say I'm going tomorrow, and you can find $30,000 houses on every other corner. So you've got me interested here. So you're buying a $30,000 house with private money for how long? How long is that note?
60 months, 5 years.
So 5 years, you are paying them, and you said how much a month?
We pay 12% interest, which makes the payment come out to $667.33
for a $30,000 house.
Correct.
Okay. And then now so you get it under contract, you start making these monthly payments. You don't do jack to the house. Now what you do is you go out to a buyer's pool of some sort and you sell it with owner or seller. What is it?
We use an agreement for deed. It's owner financing, but we do it through an agreement for deed or a contract for deed or a land contract, depending on what state you're in. But yeah, it's an agreement for deed. So the title stays in our name, but they have a 30-year agreement for deed. As once they finish paying it off, then the title gets transferred to them.
So what is a typical payment that they're making to you?
$875.
Okay. So you are making a little over $200. I
teach my people to not, this is something else that people disagree with me on. I teach my people I tell people you don't deserve to make $1 off your property until it's free and clear. And so I tell them to keep that money in the account, same as the down payment. We typically get $3,000 to $5,000 down. And I tell them, again, you leave that money in the bank account until it's free and clear. And the reason is if there's a turnover, right? If there's somebody not paying and you have to go to court and have them evicted, I don't want them to have to come up with money to have to now pay the private lender. So if you leave that $5,000 in and the extra $200 a month, now there's no pressure and no stress, which is what enables my guys to scale. Because if you had 10 properties and now you're afraid, what if 3 don't pay? I don't want to have to come up with $2,000 a month.
Right.
If you know you have that $5,000 for each one sitting in escrow, you have no stress. And now you don't mind buying 11, 12. My top guy has 126 already. And he's only been with me 5 years. He will definitely beat me in the next couple of years. And because there's no pressure when you do it this way, the way we do it, it's no pressure and stress of what if they don't pay type of stress. So that was a long way to say that $200 a month. I try to tell them not to spend it until they own it free and clear.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a great point. I am more interested in the actual buyer because there are so many people out there who can't get into home ownership because of credit, because of background checks, things like that. So are you doing the same thing, or are you, trying to help people who would maybe not be able to buy a house? Tell me about that. You know where I'm going with this.
Yep. So ironically, our demand is so high. Like we get properties and they're gone in hours. The demand for selling them is so high, but ironically, I sell them now the exact same way. If you remember what I was telling you in 1994, the exact same way I started buying. Because back then I was buying what the bank called non-qualifying assumptions, where you can assume a mortgage, you'd pay a small down payment to the seller, and the bank would put the mortgage in your name. I now sell the exact same way. Well, we don't check credit, we don't check anything. Your down payment is your approval, and we do it on a first come, first served basis. So they move quick. And we also sell to a lot of investors. I have a package closing today that's 38 properties that I'm selling 38 properties to one investor, but he's a Section 8 investor. So he's buying them from me, and now he's going to Section 8 them all. And so he'll make his spread of $300, $400, $500 a month, but he didn't have to come up with mortgages, and all. His down payment is $34,000 total. So he gets to buy very low dollar out of pocket. He'll be able to profit from them wildly as Section 8, but I don't have to do any of that. All I am is the bank. On the first, I just get my check. I don't have to deal with what he's going to deal with. He'll make good money doing it, but he's going to have a different business in mind. He's got to do the cleanup and rent them and fill them and do all the work that a Section 8 landlord does, where I'm just the bank, and I like to just be the bank. That's how we operate.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of some of these $30,000 homes that need a lot of work and would not be move-in ready. So talk about that side of it. Are they somewhat livable, or are you buying like crummy ones and then you're telling the people, hey, you know, you can't afford to buy this because of your background check or because of credit, but I can sell it to you for this, but you got to do all the work?
So your words were exactly the way I teach, the word somewhat livable. And that's seriously, that's what I tell people. People say, what kind of condition do you buy in? I said, it has to be somewhat livable, meaning someone could move into it and renovate while they're there. We can't buy something that's gutted. We can't buy stuff with holes in the roofs. We try and buy what we call somewhat livable. It doesn't mean it's showroom ready, but it's somewhat livable. Now, as far as the people who are buying it and as far as the price, it's an interesting thing because I've obviously done this a couple hundred times, so I know my exact conversations. And sometimes a person may say, and I'm gonna answer this because your listeners might be thinking it too. Well, if they're available, like you just said, in this neighborhood, you're going for $30,000. Why would someone pay $89,000 for it, right? And my answer is always the same. It's because they can. So sometimes I'm sitting at a table with somebody and they're looking at the price and they're like, 89. I saw one on the block for 45 that looked just like this house. And the way I answer that is I say, that sounds like a really good deal. I would buy that one. And then they'll say, well, I called on that one, and that one you have to pay cash. And I said, well, then I would buy mine. And that's it. I'm brutally honest with everybody. And so I just tell them, this is the way it is. If you want it, this is the deal. If you want to buy the one for 45, that's a great deal. But that one, you got to stroke a check for 45,000. Mine is $3,000 down and $875 a month.
I got to take a minute to just let this sink in, because Scott, I actually really like this. So let's talk about the lender side of this. You have, because I have lots of listeners that are thinking about getting into real estate, but they're like, I really don't want to, but I have this bucket of cash I don't know what to do with. So here's something where they can lend you the money for a $30,000 house. So they're lending you $30,000 for you to purchase it, correct? And you're paying them 12% interest, but you are paying them interest payments. Well, I guess it'd be interest and principal. Okay.
Correct. It's fully amortized, right?
Fully amortized. Thank you. And you're doing, and so they're getting checks in the mail every month for the next 5 years.
Correct.
Wow. And it's just like that simple. So what is the downside to this concept?
Okay, well, I'll tell you, there's one downside. I'll tell you exactly what people don't like about it. Because I think we were talking earlier, and there's some people that do not resonate with this, and they're like, I hate it. I hate everything about it. I'll tell you what they hate. Some people, and I was one of them prior to the bust, love their houses. They picked out the color of the paint on the door. They picked out the light fixtures. They hugged their doorknob. They love the house. And so they hate the idea that it's really not their house anymore. It's just a piece of paper. Like, I have no emotional attachment to my houses anymore. They're just papers that we shuffle. I used to drive by my houses and I loved them. And I would say, oh, I've got to put a new roof on there. And I did this and I did that. Now they're just pieces of paper to me. So people who love their houses will hate this business because you no longer have any pride of ownership. Your buyer has the pride of ownership now. The second thing, and this is a big one that people don't like, is appreciation. Like, people say, yeah, but you don't get the appreciation now, right? If it goes up to 189, you already sold it at 89, and they're 1,000% correct. Right. However, we bought it at 30, say, or 20, or 25, 50, whatever it was. And I'm giving you the base numbers. We do buy some at 50 and sell them for 189. You know, we do different models, but the base is 30 and sell for 89. And they are absolutely correct. But the way I look at that is twofold. One is we forced the appreciation on day one. We didn't wait 20 years for it to be worth 89. We did it on day one. And number two is, and sometimes they go up a lot, and I can tell you some stories about it where my buyer walked away with a lot of money, but I'm okay with it. The other flip side is they're doing all the maintenance and repairs and taking care of it or renovated it. So they deserve it. When
Sure.
It goes up and they walk away with money, they earned it. I look at that as Bank of America. I'm like, if I buy a house for 100 and Bank of America funds it and I sell it for 200, Bank of America doesn't try and get a piece of my extra 100. I did all the work. I'm the one who paid the payment every month, painted it, fixed the leaky sinks. So they deserve to make that money. And I want them to make that money. That's what makes this model work. I have buyers that buy multiple properties from us and do it repeatedly because they make a lot of money doing it. And it enables them, just like me when I started, to do it without having to go to a bank, without having to show tax returns, without having to put big down payments down. And they can stay in this business and buy properties, flip them, buy them, rent them. Some do Section 8. Some do all kinds of government programs. I got one guy that has 13 properties from me, and he does people that are getting out of jail or prison where the government funds. He does it by the room, and they fund it for him, and he's killing it. Everybody's like, yeah, but he's making $2,000 a house. He's only paying you $875. I said, I don't care. I want my $875. I'm not worried. I want everyone in the transaction to make money.
I love all of that, Scott. That is awesome. And, you know, real estate investors, we get a bad rep a lot because we're money hungry and this and that, where, you know, we actually can put on a superhero's cape on occasion and help people. And I actually really love this because we have such a housing issue in this country where people can't afford it, or they have the bad credit, they have all that. So this is really giving a pathway to home ownership. Going back before we move on here to that lender though, what if within those 5 years, they are like, you know, my kid needs to go to college and I didn't plan accordingly. So I need to, you know, call that loan or whatever. I need to get out of that loan. Has that ever happened? How do you deal with something like that?
Yeah. So they can't actually call it because it's an amortized, but if they needed the help, what we would do then is we would just get a new lender and pay off the old lender with a new one and start a brand new one over again. Most of my lenders, I'll tell you something interesting about lenders, is that's the biggest hang up most people have with doing slow flips. They're like, yeah, that all sounds great, but I don't have a lender to fund it, right? Most of my lenders and most of my students' lenders all stem from one. I always tell people, I say, you don't need 100 lenders, you need one lender. And then that lender, people know people who are like themselves, right? So that lender now is bragging to their friends when they're at a party about they're making a 12% return and the check comes every month like clockwork, until their friends say, hey, do you think he needs another lender? See if he'll take on another lender. And then I'll get a text or a call from my lender. Hey, I got a friend that's interested in doing this. Would you be open to another lender? And it really changes the dynamic because we're not asking anybody to be our lender. People are asking us, you know, do you need another lender? Would you mind taking on another guy as a lender? And it really helps everybody. And I have people that have been doing this since 2011. It's completely secured their retirement. Like I get texts and emails from them. They're like, you don't know how much this means. My whole retirement has changed because of this program. And so that's why I say everybody wins. I'm like, the lender wins, we win, our buyer wins, everybody wins in the transaction.
I absolutely love this. I have one more question. So on the slow flip, what if you have someone that defaults on payments?
So that is a great question, and it will happen no matter how good things go. You're going to have people default. So we invest in what we call landlord-friendly states, right? And so we do that on purpose.
Quickly talk about why.
Well, because there are states like New York, for instance, that, you know, people say, oh, California. New York, you can't buy houses at that price, right? You can. In upstate New York, there's tons of them.
Yes.
And I do have some students that invest there, but that's only because that's where they live. So it's easier to invest in your backyard. But an eviction in New York could take you over a year, could take longer than that. If you go to California, Oregon, Washington, they have crazy rules. And so it might take you so long that it's just not worth it, or you'd have to ask for huge amounts of money down. So we invest in states that treat them, if they default, it gets converted almost like they're a month-to-month rental then, and it's a regular eviction as though it was a tenant. And so you don't have to go through lengthy court process to reclaim your house if somebody was to default. And so it's not a big deal at all. There are some states like Alabama, for instance, where they do require a foreclosure, even if you do a contract for deed. So my students there will either A, do lease options, or they'll do a regular owner finance where the deed transfers, because their foreclosure time there is very short. It's only about 6 weeks from start to finish. So if they're in one of those states, they'll do it. Just every state it works in, you just have to modify a little bit to comply with the local laws.
Okay, so you buy in landlord-friendly states, and somebody defaults. You have their deposit. You keep the deposit, the down payment that they did, and then you just then redo the whole thing. Repeat.
Yep. Yep.
And I know I said that was my last question, but truly my last question is, how do you find buyers? Because we know there's a housing crisis right now, and I'm sure there's such a huge need. Are there like lists? Are there like websites for, lease options? Like, how do you find these specific buyers?
So we have a huge list of our own. However, the way we build a list and the way we find our buyers is really simple. We do it primarily through Facebook Marketplace, local real estate investing groups in the city where the home is, and through YouTube, which YouTube people don't think of as a place to market. But because we lead all of our leads to YouTube, so to see the videos of the property, then they subscribe. And then as new properties come up, they automatically get a notification that there's another property. So those are the three main sources that we use to fill the properties. Filling them is never an issue because there's a huge demand. You might have 100 people that want it, and there's only one house.
Wow.
So it is a huge demand for them.
Well, I didn't think I was going to like you this much, but I really do like all of this, Scott. I'm just kidding. This is so great, and I appreciate you sharing it. And you have a gift for my listeners. So what is it?
Christmas. It's Christmas.
And by the way, this is getting released on Christmas Day. So what is the Christmas gift for everyone?
Present. So I have written a book called The Art of the Slow Flip, where we go through the entire process step by step from beginning to end. And I'm going to give your listeners a copy for free.
Merry Christmas!
slowflip.com, and they can go to it and get a copy sent to them for free. And I really break it down. Like when I wrote this, I did not hold anything back. So there is no that you need to do something else to learn the full thing. I went through everything, including raising private money, which is everybody's biggest stumbling block, is to raising private money. And so I really believe, and I know we spoke about this earlier, that if you read the book, then you will know if slow flips are for you or not for you, because it's not for everybody. Some people will say, no, I want to keep doing the BRRRR method, or I like doing my Section 8, or whatever they're doing. They all work. One of my famous sayings, and I didn't make it up, is there's a million ways to make $1 million. Choose one, right? They all work. You just got to choose the thing that resonates with you. And so some people love slow flips, and my group, obviously, that's all obsessed with slow flips. But then there's people who say, nah, I don't want to do that because I'm going to miss out. What if they all go to $10 million a house? I'm not going to get in on that. And they're right. So there's good and bad, with everything. But I have 112 of them are free and clear now. And it's amazing the difference, the way my life is now to when I used to collect mortgages and have to pay them out.
And now the money is going to run out in 30 years, though.
Well, yes and no. So yes, the money would run out in 30 years, providing we never had turnover. But you're in this industry. The average length of stay in America for someone to live in the same house is 3 to 5 years. So either in 3 to 5 years, they turn around and sell it, in which case you get cashed out. And what do you do with that money? Buy 3 more. Instead of 1, now you got 3, right?
Right.
Or they give it back to you, which they're welcome to do, or they decide that they're going to keep it as a rental for themselves. But either way, typically we have, you have some turnover. So, and I'm constantly buying new ones. When someone pays me off, I take that money and I buy 3 more. And that's how we've been growing so much.
Scott, I love all of this. Thank you so much. And once again, that website is slowflip.com for them to put in their information. And then when they finish reading the book and they see how amazing this is and they want even more, you do offer an education program as well for the next step beyond that.
Correct. We have a group. It's called the Freedom Accelerator Program, and it's really something different. I did this intentional. I'm on a mission. I don't know if I told you. I'm on a mission to help as many people as possible to set themselves free through real estate investing. And so we set up this program where it's not a course. It does have course component, but it's course, community, and coaching. And so once a week, I go live with everybody and we go over everybody's deals, everybody's challenges, because no matter how great they are, there's still going to be challenges, right?
There's never challenges. Come on.
Yeah. So we go over the challenges. We work, we stay on for hours and work through everything every single week. And it's really been like an unbelievable community. I said, there's people in there that I really believe will surpass me in the next couple of years with the amount of properties, because it's accelerated. That's what it is, the Freedom Accelerator program. Because what took me 30 years to do, they're now doing in 5 because of the acceleration.
Well, thank you for sharing the slow flip on the podcast today. And we are going to go into the second part of the podcast, which is what makes Scott a badass. And I use the acronym BADASS. And the first letter is B for book. What's a book that's made a huge difference in your life?
I read a lot. So I'm looking at my bookshelf now. I have hundreds. I read a lot of books, but I'll tell you one that's a common one that you probably heard people say 100 times, but really changed my thinking a lot was the 4-Hour Work Week. It really made an impact on me to become less obsessed with building bigger and more obsessed with a bigger life and not necessarily bigger business.
So important. And, I'm learning that as well. I recently read Profit First for Real Estate Investing. And in there, one of the things that David Richter states is, I've been talking about him a lot on my podcast. I just hung out with him a couple weekends ago, but he said there are people who did fewer flips that actually made more money. And that I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do. And even this concept, Scott, of doing the slow flip, of not having to deal with renovations and doing that. So, by the way, does this apply to multifamily?
You can. So I've only done small multifamily with slow flips. And not because it doesn't work with large, I just haven't done it. So I've done up to 8 units. I've done 4 units. I've done duplexes, and we buy them and then we sell them with long-term owner financing. It would work with a large multifamily if you found the right deal, but I still haven't. I've never personally done one like that yet.
Now, are you selling off the entire, say, quad, or are you selling them off as condos? Yeah. Each one.
You have to sell it together unless you do the work to have them deeded separately.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for taking that little sidebar question there. All right. The first A in BADASS is for advice. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Well, don't do what everyone else does. That debt, I know you're into, everybody's pretty much into leverage. Believe me, I swim upstream against everybody because I am all about free and clear. And so my best advice was that don't follow the crowd. There's peace in being free and clear. And I know it, I know it's so controversial for people because the math suggests otherwise. And one of the things I used to do live events all the time, and I would talk about free and clear. And I would say, if you consult your attorney would tell you don't want to be free and clear because you're going to be susceptible to lawsuits, right?
Right.
And they're right. There's ways around that. Then you talk to your CPA, and your CPA will be like, no, you don't want to be free and clear. You're going to lose your biggest tax write-off. And they're right. But, you get the cash. You pay more taxes, but you get to keep more cash. And then I said, if you were to consult your calculator, right, your calculator only knows facts. Your calculator will say, don't be free and clear. You can make more money if. And then I follow it up with saying, but your calculator's missing a button, and that's the peace of mind button. And so, and you can't really appreciate it until you've ever not had peace of mind because of the leverage, right? And so because of that, I am dead set on it, and I really appreciate the advice that got me into that back in 2008, 2009, when I was recovering, to make a different path moving forward.
And do you find many of your students that maybe they do this, they diversify and have a couple slow flips going on while they're doing some active income and some, doing some BRRRR while that's going on, but they still have this. So in 5 years, they're going to be sitting pretty because everything's going to be paid off because it's just kind of sitting there churning up the cash flow, but, will hit in 5 years.
Yeah, so we still wholesale. So I have some of my guys still rehab. I stopped rehabbing in 2013, but some of my guys still rehab. I still wholesale, and a lot of my guys still wholesale. And then there's also, and we didn't talk about this, we don't have enough time to talk about every asset, every facet of slow flips, but we also do have sub twos that we will buy. That's why I said there's two sides, the buy side and the sell side. We may still buy a property sub two. It's a good deal. It'll cash flow a lot. But instead of keeping it as a rental, we'll sell it on the slow flip model. So we're not paid off in 5 years, but we got a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 house. My highest one is 875, and it's cash flowing a massive amount of money, low money down because it already had a mortgage. So we still do those as well. Not BRRRR because we're not refining. I never want to refi and pull money out, but we will leverage if it's a sub 2.
Super, super smart. All right. The D in badass is for drive. What drives Scott to be successful?
So I have always been about freedom, and that's why I always tell people. And now I did recently buy a house in the Bahamas, and my plan is to, in 4 years when my son leaves for college, my plan is to do 3 or 4 months a year there. And that's always been a big drive of mine. I'm always, and most people are, and you probably are as well, I'm always planning 2, 3, 5 years out as to what we're working toward, right? And so that was always on my list, and now I've accomplished it. So I'm revamping the list as to what's going to be next. But that's it. It's my family and freedom. I've always been, I'm more obsessed with the fact that I'm home right now, that I can be home and do whatever I want. I don't have to ever be anywhere. And then I am about having certain things. I like that I'm free and I can do whatever, whenever.
Amen to that. And by the way, you do have a video on your website. Did you take that at your Bahama residence?
Yes.
That is a beautiful house, by the way. I was like, oh, look at that background. Very, very jealous. Yeah. I do like me some Bahamas. All right. And I grew up in South Florida, so that was like an easy, quick little, cruise over there. All right. Back to being a badass. The second A in badass is for aspiration. I'm a big goal setter. So what is a goal you are currently working on?
Well, I have 2 big ones that I'm currently working on. So one of them, and I think I told you, is to help as many people set themselves free as possible. But I've put a number on that where I want to get 100 people to $100,000 a month. And we're well on our way to doing it, which is one of my big things. And the second thing, which is a materialistic goal, is that since we bought the house in the Bahamas and I go a lot, and I also travel a lot for SEC games because my son's a big Mississippi State fan. I do now on my vision have a plane. I want to get a plane. That's something I'm working toward now.
Do you have your pilot? Do you have a pilot's license?
No, I'm gonna get a bigger plane where I hire a pilot. I'm not gonna fly it.
Good for you. I like that. How long is the flight from Virginia Beach?
So we go right now. We have to fly to Lauderdale, it's about 2 hours, and then it's 20. We go Bimini is only 25 minutes from Lauderdale.
Got it. All right. The first S in badass is for systems. What systems do you have in place to help you achieve success?
So I'm not a very big, I'm not a tech guy, as you know, when we tried to set up my camera. I'm not a tech guy. I'm very simple, but I try to stick to, like, when we do slow flips, it is a system. We have a system for every part of it, for locating the properties, for filling the properties, for marketing the properties, for if they don't pay. And so those are my biggest systems. And I tell my people, I'm like, just do it the way we do. You don't have to reinvent anything because what we do works. And I believe in just following it exactly as it is. I don't use a lot of technology because, I'm not tech savvy. If I was younger when tech started being a big thing, I'm sure I would have. But I got to the point where I was like, I can't figure it out. Let me just have someone else do it for me. And
it goes back to that Who book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Who Not How. That's a good book.
Who Not How, yes. Yep. Very good. All right. The final S to wrap this up is success. What does success mean to you?
So, ironically, we already tapped on that. What success means to me is freedom. It's not. I used to have my goals were based around a number, which most people do. It was all based around how much I wanted to bring in monthly. And it wasn't until after the bust and I had to start over again that I realized that was an arbitrary number. It meant nothing. I just picked a big number and said, let me get to that number. When I realized, even before I started doing the refining back in 2001, I could have done nothing to participate in the boom and been at 20 grand a month positive cash flow when the bust happened and kept it. And I'm like, that really was eye-opening to me, that to make sure what your future vision is, it's actually what you want and not just a number that you're trying to beat someone else's number, right? And there's a quote that I love that says, comparison is the thief of joy. I'm sure you've heard that.
Yes.
And I love that because you know somebody else who's making $200,000 a month. So you're like, okay, I'm going to go for 250. But why? You don't know what that person's doing throughout their day and if they're even miserable in their lives. And so I really try and just focus on our own freedom and not worrying about what anyone else is doing at any given time.
Well, Scott, I am so grateful for this opportunity to meet you, and you have really opened my eyes to other possibilities, and I kind of want to diversify my portfolio as well, and it'd be very nice for things to start hitting in about 5 years, and I am going to be looking at a couple more properties tomorrow when I'm headed to Rocky Mount, North Carolina. So people who are in my area know, oh yeah, you can get some $30,000 homes there. But this is, Scott, just so fantastic. And I am excited to go to www.slowflip.com to order my book today. This has been an absolute pleasure. Scott, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Absolutely. And that is all. Thank you for listening. And we will catch you on the next episode. Now go out there and share your badassery. And don't forget, make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for listening to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. If you need more badassery, you can follow Jen Josie by visiting therealjenjosie.com or become a member of RAIN by registering on rainmastermind.com.